Welcome back into my channel. I'm William Galloway. I do communications as a professional and interview sports media personalities, people in communications, digital media content creation. Love to talk with athletes. And regarding all those topics, there's no one better to talk to now than today's guest, Justin Stuckey, the pride of Helena, Alabama. Justin, how are you?
Doing good. Shout out to them Huskies, man. Shout out to H-Town.
That is one of the high schools here in Birmingham, Alabama. Wherever you're watching in the world, I'm a Mountain Brook native. Justin went to Helena, and then let's talk about your journey real fast because you went to Samford, and then you ended up having your grad year at Auburn. But kind of tell us, give us some of your background, Justin.
Yeah, so like you said, from Helena, Alabama, small town on the suburbs of Birmingham. I was a multi-sport athlete growing up, football, basketball, track and field. Seems like the Lord wanted me to end up doing track and field in college. There's a lot of debate about which was my best sport. Basketball and football definitely gives track a run for its money, but ended up getting an opportunity to go to Sanford on a scholarship, and it was very much needed at the time. Full scholarship, full ride to jump over a bar doesn't sound too bad, and I had a great time there. A great opportunity to be a part of that school, be a part of the program, and I feel like once I kind of let my guard down, everything kind of came to fruition there. Things are going well on the track, off the track. And as you said, I ended up going to Auburn afterwards. I graduated from Sanford, marketing degree. And it wasn't until I went to Auburn that kind of the media stuff started. Like I was doing the vlogs and everything for track, but I started my podcast the summer of 2022. That's the summer going into Auburn. And then from there, yeah, things just kind of took off. Not gonna
So,
lie.
yeah, from your perspective though, you had probably the most transformative 4 or 5 years of college because you have pre-COVID, COVID, and then the content creation scene changed. And that's what I want to talk about a lot today is content creation. But before we get into that, tell me about your background to do, to be an aspiring broadcaster that you are now and sports media personality. Did you
Mm.
find that at an early age or did it come along in college? What was your interest in getting into that field?
It definitely came along in college. I would say I was always been a pretty outgoing person. Like I was never really shy with the camera, but it just wasn't something I was doing. I was the athlete. Like I was getting interviewed. I wasn't doing the interviews. Really, I didn't really care on that scene, to be honest. But when it came to, I think the vlogs really introduced me into just the camera itself. Like I enjoyed recapping and highlighting, documenting everything we were doing in track and field. And so I started about outdoor season my junior year. And then I think I became way more comfortable in that space. I hosted Step Sing, if anybody knows what
Oh
that
yeah.
is for Sanford, huge event. And so being on stage, all those shows, I was like, man, like this is easy. I like this energy. And so that was kind of like a trickle of introduction. But like I said, going into Auburn is when I started the podcast. I started it because I'm not going to say his name because he's doing way better on ESPN, doing his thing. But I was watching him on TV and I was like, he doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. I can do that. And as naive as that sounded, I was very confident in my ability to be able to speak to sports and, speak publicly. And so I talked to a few people. I talked to Lauren Sisler, had lunch with her. One of my good friends, Anaya, told me that I should start a podcast. And so that was the next move to be able to create leverage for myself. And so I started that, had my first episode with my friend Montreal Washington, who is now in the Giants. He had just got drafted by the Broncos. We were in Atlanta, did the podcast, and it went way better than I expected. So just kept it rolling from there.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing because of the evolution we talked about from 2019 to now we're in 2025 as we record this. Athletes used to be so shut down. And I'm an Alabama
Mhm.
guy, and Nick Saban didn't allow freshmen to talk to the media. And for good reason. They needed their training and, they're representing the dynasty of all college football and all these things. But now we live in a content creation world, and Orion Williams 3 years ago, in terms of content creation, personal branding, and marketing, would not probably have been able to do what he's done off the field. Now, on the field for Nick Saban is a whole different story, but what he's done over the last, let's say, 18 months since being at
Mhm.
Alabama has transformed his life, and he's only going into his sophomore season. So, But all that to say, I've done a podcast with Britton Johnson. He was a walk-on at Alabama, but the inside scoop that you get from the athletes, I think, is really what the fans want to see. Because you hear different things from the media. You hear coach speak in a press conference, and you would even have, player speak, coach speak when
Mhm.
talking to the local media. But to be able to unveil that curtain, show your true personality as a student athlete is something that I think comes out post-pandemic of people gravitate to that. They want that. And did you feel that as you were starting that channel?
I think so. You talk about the evolution of college athletics landscape in general. Like my freshman year was the first every year of the transfer portal being open. My junior year, end of my junior year, going into my senior year of undergrad is when NIL was released. So it was just so much, so many moving parts, so many things happening. I feel like there was definitely a ease for athletes to feel like, okay, we don't have to tiptoe around this anymore. Number one, it's legal, just making the money in general. But now, like we look at ourselves as a brand, it became very different because you have to balance being at school, getting grades. You have to balance being on whatever competitive field or court or whatever you're doing. Then you got to balance your own personal brand because you knew that was an avenue that you can now run down. I feel like when I started it, it was people looked at it as like, okay, that's cool because you didn't see people doing that much. And now I'm doing it. I was kind of like going all in. It was interesting. People were looking forward to what guests I was having on. And I learned quickly, like, man, it's hard to balance that while you're a student athlete. Like that's why mine were so spread out because the time was already thin. And so adding that component, it was something in itself for sure.
And you've got to talk to a lot of cool people, and I don't want to put you on the spot and say who have been your favorites. I mean, it seems like a low level low hanging fruit question, but talk about your
Yeah.
experience and talking to all those people. And you mentioned a lot of high caliber media personalities, but what you've learned from them because an interview is not just a list where I'm sitting here reading something saying. What's your favorite game you've called? What can I do to
Yeah.
get to the next level? It's about listening. It's about knowing the people. It's about doing your research before. So when you talked about that first episode, and now here we are in summer of 2025, what have you learned as you've interviewed and met and connected with all those folks?
Man, that's a loaded question because I've learned a whole lot. I wish I had my books over in there. I got this journal. They're gonna put it in a museum one day once I make it. It's got every situation, every moment, every job shadow, every contact I've ever made, just writing down notes in this little journal. But I think the work starts off the camera. Like I say, I was the king of job shadowing. I cold DM'd, reached out to everybody I could to learn that landscape after. So I had the Jay Billis episode. He is the one who introduced me in the job shadowing because I didn't have a clue what that was. I sat down with him Friday on my show, and he asked me that was I coming to the game the next day. It was in Auburn, Bama versus Auburn. He asked me, did I want a job shadow? I was like, what is that? And so I had no clue. But after that, I learned that I could be in the environment. That's the closest thing I could be as far as except being on TV. Learning from those people away from all the quote unquote fans that are like just trying to, meet them. I was trying to learn from them. And so I continued to hone my craft on that. Like I remember one night I cold DM Laura Rutledge and asked her could I job shadow at SEC Nation. She actually responded and we, exchanged contacts and I got to, be around them. Now she's one of my mentors in a space. Look at like a Reese Davis, kind of the same way. Um, I think one big thing I've learned is everybody's path is different, no matter who you are. At first I came into the thing thinking it was going to be this big cookie cutter way, like, oh, I get this information, boom, I'm instantly know what to do. It doesn't always happen like that. You take pieces of information and kind of apply it to your own situation and know that it's going to be different. But I think for me, man, like not to, brag on myself, I just feel like I was a go getter as far as like I was gonna do everything that I could to learn and try to be in those spaces. Like I remember I was at home, Auburn was playing at home, but I didn't want to go to the game. And I went home just to watch the game. And I saw that Marty Smith was doing the sideline. I immediately got up, got in my car, drove to Neville Arena, just waited around to meet him. And that ended up helping me in the long run because when I did the NBA Summer League sideline, I had never done sideline in my life. I texted Marty on the plane. I was like, yo, I got this opportunity. What advice can you give me? And he gave me
Yeah.
this big rundown of stuff. And so you just think about, man, if I wasn't willing to do the dirty work or do something that was uncomfortable, I wouldn't have had that resource later on. I've learned so much, man, from the people I've been able to meet. And you asked about who have been my favorites on the show. I think it's all about situation for me. Like Laura Relish sticks out. I went to the ESPN headquarters. She showed me around, got to be a part on the side for NFL Live. But she had NFL execs come in that same day. She told them that she was going to be late. They got to wait so she could come on my show. And to me, that stuck out a whole lot. Um, Reese Davis was a really cool one too, just like in the moment. But I'm appreciative of everybody that's come on the show because they didn't have to. They took the time out of their day and their schedule. And it's been fun, like highlighting the stories and having conversations. I got one dropping tomorrow, back
There
for
we
season
go.
5. Yep. So stay tuned for that one.
That's excited. I just subscribed to your channel right before this, so stuck in
Appreciate
my
it.
thoughts. Looking forward to that. You mentioned something, and I think this is important. And I, want to share my faith in everything that I do. And I think there's a fine line of, and you talked about you putting yourself out there. We have to be our biggest advocates because we know what we're capable of. We know what we aspire to. And I think there's a way to do that and also have humility. And I think this is one of the reasons I was like, I got to talk to Justin because you do such a good job. And I try to emulate that of we don't want to put ourselves and our content out there to say, look at us, let's glorify ourselves. But
Mm,
we do have to be our biggest advocates because, like I said, we know what we're capable of. We know what we're striving for. We know what the end goal is. And someone's not just going to come along, right? Marty Smith is not just going to come along and say, pull you out of the crowd and say, oh, are you interested? Do you want to come sideline? You've got to do that,
mm.
yourself. Um, and I think one, I want to hear the story on how you got the Final Four job because I
Oh,
think that was one of the coolest things that popped up on Twitter. I was like, I know that guy or I know of him, know him now.
yeah.
And I just want to hear about that because working with Ernie and Chuck and the whole, I guess they were on CBS, but the TNT crew, tell me about that
Mm.
experience. That was
So
fantastic.
you talk about the faith. Number one, the Lord made it happen. I'm gonna give my props to the good Lord always. But secondly, and this is crazy, but I think tearing my knee is what made it happen, honestly. Because when I first got to Auburn, it was just like, I was probably like the highest ranked recruit, probably other than Anthony Schwartz to come in there. Um, I definitely was the number one transfer at the portal at the time. So it was like, come in, win an Natty, high expectations. But I got asked to speak at an FCA in Auburn, spoke to the FCA from a perspective of like, oh, I'm this big time athlete, right? Fast forward, I tear my knee, not so big time athlete anymore. She asked me to come back, Miss Fellow, shout out to her. She asked me to come back and speak to the students there about having my identity rooted in Christ rather than the sport because I got hurt. Spoke to the athletes. She knew what I wanted to do. She said, hey, I used to coach this girl. She now works at TNT. Introduced me to her via email. We had a call. Same old thing at first. It was like, oh, you're doing so many amazing things. Just keep doing what you're doing. I was so sick of hearing that. I was
Yeah.
like, okay.
It
But
does
two,
wear out after a point. You're like, yeah, but I
yeah,
want it. How do I get to the chair?
yeah. How do I get there now? So 2 hour opportunity for the fellowship thing that I did for the Final Four. I was like, okay. And so I applied, did the original application. Then I had the interview. Um, and I was like, oh, this is legit. And we were at Florida State for a track meet. And this is kind of like, this could go on forever, but this was the mindset I had at the time as an athlete. I was, doubting myself, my ability at the time. I knew I wasn't 100% back right. And I was just like, Lord, they called me until I got it, right? I was like, Lord, don't let me get hurt at this track meet so I can't do this Final Four. Um, but I didn't get hurt. Praise the Lord. And man, that really exposed me to like what can be. That was a great Final Four experience. Shout out to Phoenix. That was a great venue. Shout out to TNT for giving me the opportunity, Ben and Victoria. Um, but it was such a cool opportunity. I was just supposed to do the Final Four, the Saturday game, um, but it went well, and so the producer gave me the national championship game too, and so that was pretty cool. And I feel like that was the moment that more people saw. People saw the Final Four like the first day too, but that national championship day was cool because it gave me the mic again and let me talk more. And so that back and forth between Chuck and all of them was uh, a great experience. And it opened up more doors like the
Yeah.
summer league and stuff.
And so for clarification, you were doing sideline pregame,
Yeah,
halftime, and postgame?
I was in the pregame show for the Final Four. And so I believe it was all pregame. Yeah, it was all pregame. But I got three or four chances to be on.
That's
So that was cool.
incredible. And it was so cool to see your work and then you to pop up with the lower third and everything.
Yeah.
Um, Justin, I want to ask you because I mentioned him earlier in the show and in this interview, and you hear about guys like Ryan Williams and Jalen Ibakwe and Dre
Mm.
Kirkpatrick Jr., their show The New Wave, right? Mimicking what you kind of started and helped create in the college world. Um, that is something that we're going to continue to see and it's going to continue to evolve. And whether it is produced and created in-house from production departments within the athletic department, it all kind of depends on this. With the new recent house settlement that was announced and NIL, all those things are kind of changing. It was announced that yay Alabama is turning into a more content driven approach for fans, and so it's less of an ask. But ultimately, regardless of whoever and however shows are produced, we're going to see an uptick in that. And so, how much pride and joy does it give you to know that you were on kind of the front end of that? And it's still going to evolve and opportunities for people that are coming along in high school now. You think about top
Mm.
athletes, whether it's track, football, basketball, baseball. Um, that's something that's going to stay and be an opportunity for them in the future.
Yeah, I think number one, I got to throw some love to my Auburn. You're talking about a lot of Alabama over there. Shout out to
Of
War Eagle
course,
Plus.
of course.
They're doing some big things too. But I think it's pretty cool. I don't think I've thought about it as like, I guess you could say being a trailblazer of it. I have been able to see kind of like obviously you got the big names like Flajay Johnson, for example, from LSU. Like she's got her thing, but it's with overtime. She's just a huge name. I think I think it's great because it teaches athletes that they can do more than just their sport because it has nothing to do with their sport. And so it kind of makes them take initiative, come up with ideas, do different things. So they're not the I'm too cool for school athlete. Cause I'd be sick of that, bro. Like one of my biggest
Right.
pet peeves at Auburn and Sanford, it didn't matter, was like the people who felt like they were too good to participate. Like I was probably one of the most well-known athletes at Auburn, and I barely competed, but I participated in everything. You are too cool to participate, and so I
Right.
think it's cool to see them evolve. We're going to continue to evolve so much. Like the house settlement is going to be insane, but it has been pretty cool to see everybody kind of come up with their own lane and come up with different ideas and what sticks for them, and it kind of teaches them because some things may stick and may be good, but some things may fail, and it gives them an avenue to keep creating, keep thinking because you hear the not everybody's going to make it to the league, but at this point you ain't even got to make it to the league because you're making money now.
Right.
So,
And I think I worked as a student journalist in college. You attend the press conferences, or my senior year, you had to jump into the Zoom and you're looking for content, right? You start following the players on social media was kind of the first chapter of this, where if somebody posts something on their social media, on their Instagram story, on their Snapchat, whatever, bam, breaking news. Are they in the portal because they posted that they're in Tulsa, Oklahoma on their Snapchat? And that was kind of the first
mm,
wave. And now everyone has their content and their interviews that they go to. So it's no longer a coach sitting behind a podium 3 days a week before a football game where you get your news, right? It's from the
mm,
players. And sure, that makes it difficult on the sports information staff, but in the new world and a new era of keep talking about content creation, but really content consumption, everything that's put out there is news. And so, did you feel that as a student athlete? Obviously, the footprint bigger at Auburn and Samford, but something you put out there that could get picked up, be in the newspaper tomorrow, be on the ESPN headline tonight. There's some pressure there, but also the media world and the landscape just changed so fast.
I think for me, like obviously Sanford's smaller than Auburn, but after my junior year, like when I went to Olympic trials and everything, like my junk just took off. So I was in a portal. I was in a portal the fall of my senior year because I wanted to test the waters before the season started because I didn't want to be distracted nor be a distraction to my team. And I remember I put out a Instagram story that I was in LA and I was on my UCLA visit at the time, and that kind of like sparked a little uproar. But that's why I didn't post. I didn't post anything of my visits until way after the fact. And you get to those things where everybody's snooping on social media. Everybody wants to know what somebody's doing. I think it's gotten to the point where we create these false narratives in our head because we're looking for something and that isn't there. But it's one of those things where you got athletes who are under a microscope these days. And I'm kind of glad I got out of it now. Like, I do wish I could have stayed in like football or basketball because that money's about to be crazy. But I got to see so much, like from the time of the transfer portal, time of NIL, to the time of really hearing about the house settlement. Like, I just got done last spring. So I had a
Right.
long stretch of a college career. But yeah, there's so much. Everybody has something to say. Everybody's looking for something, and nobody's going to be satisfied. I'm just going to throw that out there. Everybody's going to have something wrong with something.
Yeah.
But I think for the athletes now, you just got to take advantage. I still think it needs to be the priority of the school, like classroom, and what they're doing, like performing wise. But man, that bag about to throw a wrench in college athletics.
It's, you think about people talk about athletic directors or administrators and I want to do this, I want to do that, and then you're like, hold on, let's think about
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing and what's on their plate, on today, Monday, June 16th. Think about what they did in light of all the recent news, and it's not a 8 to 5 job. You're on the clock
Yeah.
every hour of every day, and you may get the 4th of July off to go to the lake, but that's
Yeah.
I think the going back to kind of the content area, right? That we talk about the consumption, we talk about the creation of it. And we mentioned, people in high school and college are coming along and it's going to continue to cultivate I'm trying to think how I want to ask this. When we mentioned kind of the future too, talking about that, and we mentioned you being a pioneer, do you think that with your experience, right, you could become a teacher and mentor? I think that's one of the things that I've found so satisfying. I work in a school system, K-12, and helping high school kids cultivate their craft has been more rewarding than having a successful 10 p.m. sportscast. I remember seeing
Mm.
somebody excel and grow as a photographer or as a broadcaster or an announcer has given me more fulfillment on the back end. So, do you see yourself wanting to mentor people that come along behind you?
Well, it's funny because I get a lot of messages about people asking me for advice. And I feel not the imposter syndrome or anything, but I feel like, dang, I'm still trying to make it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've had great opportunities thus far, but sometimes I feel like, dang, like, what advice am I going to give somebody? But I try my best. And I think when you talked about the where you get that satisfaction from mentoring the younger generation, I get that on the athletic side of things. So like this past year, I was a volunteer coach with Sanford and helping out with the track team. Like that's where I thrive in my lane. This media stuff is something to where it was a hobby, but then I was really good at it, so it kind of helped become a career. I feel like I'm always going to be a resource to anybody that wants to do this because there were people who helped me. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be very hypocritical to be like, "Oh, I'm not going to help you," but dang, think about all the people that helped me. Like I could just name off a whole bunch of people who have helped me along my journey, heard me out or heard me out, let me shadow them, gave me advice, anything. Like I remember I hit up Reese like a couple weeks ago asking him about future stuff that doesn't even pertain to me right now, but knowing like he signed a contract to stay with ESPN, and I wanted to know the factors that went into it because I know Fox had tried to give him a huge bag, but he turned it down. So I want to know, hey, like in my future when I'm presented this opportunity, what are the factors I really need to keep to my core values and decide am I going to take this or not? And so just to know that I have that level of relationship with people who are at the top of their game now, I'm definitely going to be able, or I'm definitely going to be willing to give anybody advice. I don't care the level. Like, I really don't. I don't feel like you're ever too big for somebody. Um, Obviously, go about it in the right way, like
Yeah.
reaching out and things like that. But, oh man, I'm always going to be willing to help and try to give my best advice and give experiences. But I know for certain down the line, Lord willing, I get my career on ESPN and do my thing. But once all of that's said and done, I want to get back into the athletic space, whether it's coaching or AD role, and just help the next gen there.
Well, you may need to go ahead and give you've already made the jump. You did the SoCon to the SEC jump. You probably need to call Bucky if you hadn't already, give him all the
Yeah.
advice he can take on jumping from the SoCon to the SEC. I know he'll be needing some help as he makes that jump. But
Yeah.
is
Shout out
is
to
he
him and
somebody
Warren.
you followed? Because I know you're a big basketball guy. I think I called a couple
Yeah.
of your games as a PA announcer.
I know Bucky well, and Bucky know me. I was a hooper back in
Oh
my
yeah.
day.
Maybe we tag your highlight tape from high school at the end of this. Find your
Oh,
huddle or something.
drop it because it should have been picked up by all the D1s. But anyway, yeah, Bucky's my guy, man. I wish him the best of luck down there, and Warren's my guy for real. You know, it's a different feeling with somebody when you're going through the trenches, going through the workouts, and we were able to thrive when it came to Sanford track and field, and seeing how he's been able to involve in his role when he went to the basketball team as a grad assistant to director of ops at Sanford, and now going down there to College Station. So yeah, man, wishing them the best. I know Bucky's got that mentality though. Like in today's age, you can flip a roster quick. So I'm not really worried
Yeah.
about what they got down there. They're
Hey,
gonna do
tell
their
tell
thing.
me about that jump though, for real, to the SEC, because as a student athlete, right, going from busing everywhere to all of a sudden, and I know maybe in the SEC track didn't get all of it all the time, but I'm sure you guys
Mm-hmm.
chartered some jets or the
So
the uptick in quality of life is, probably mind-boggling for a 21, 22-year-old.
yeah, you it's definitely a there's definitely more resources at an SEC school for real. I was hurt a lot of times, so I didn't get the luxury of flying. I flew more at Sanford than I did at Auburn,
That's funny.
which is crazy. But it's just because I was hurt. But yeah, we had buses for the guys, buses for the girls. We had meals prepped out the wazoo. The athlete only dining hall. Shout out to Wellness. That was a big adjustment going from Sanford, where you're with everybody in one place, to Auburn,
Yeah.
and you're just athletes only. Um, it's just more money in everything, bro. Like from the gear, from the nutritionist, from the meals, how things are structured and organized. It was just different. There's a lot more money in the SEC. But it was a thing like you still had to keep the main thing the main thing. That's what I tried to do, regardless. And I feel like it helped me, like despite my injuries, without the injuries, like talent's there, obviously, but work ethic was really what separated me when I got there, because I didn't let the glitz and glamour distract me and try to go over here. Like I kept the main thing the main thing. But it was nice though, man. They had all types of stuff there, bro. Freaking Austin checks. That Austin checks it was a lot of money. It was crazy.
That is hilarious. Well, hey, I got two questions for you before we go, and one of them is going to be you closing us out with a last word. But for anybody that's meeting Justin Stuckey for the first time, give us your 5, 10, and your 50-year plan. As we have met you, if
Mm.
people have gotten to know you, it's not all about just content creation and videos and interviews. You were former All-American and athlete, and you're growing your personal brand. Obviously, you talked about, one of your most satisfying things is getting to be a coach and giving back and
Mm.
being involved in athletics. So let's hear the plan down the road, your aspirations, and then I got one more question before we close out.
5-year plan. I definitely want to be locked in on a major network or represented by some big company. I got Fanatics Fest coming up in New York this weekend, so who knows what could happen this weekend? I try not to put a timeline on things. Shoot, definitely want a family. When it comes to marriage, kids, kind of structure myself here. I don't mind staying in Birmingham and just traveling to where I got to go to. I want to be a part of a recognizable show. I actually had a call today. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I had a call today with a network, and I was telling them that growing up in the South, it was all about college sports. Like you see the game days, you see the SEC nations. I want to be a part of something like that. And I also want to be able to give back in the community and do different other business ventures. And then 50-year plan, what will I be? 70 at some point? Oh man, I'm chilling. I'd have created generational wealth by that point, and just making sure I keep my face strong through that journey. That's a long time.
50 years down the road, that's I didn't even think about conceptually where I'd be at that point, but
Yeah.
it's a lot further from 50 than you would want to think. Justin, one thing I like to do, I picked this up, gosh, I'm trying to remember now. There's been fortunate to do a lot of interviews, but um, I learned this from somebody, and to whoever it was, I appreciate you. But I like to leave the last word with the guest, and so I'm going to leave it with you at the end of your shout outs, your message of encouragement or hope or inspiration, whatever it is. That'll be the end of the show. But one thing I like to do is leave our interviewee with the last word. So I'm going to leave it to you with an open floor. Any type of shout out, any message of encouragement, message of appreciation to anybody, anything you want to share for up to 5.5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Number one, God is good. I feel like when there's times where you feel like you're alone, you're never alone. I feel like he's good when you're at your top and when you're at your bottom. So that's number one. I feel like if you set a goal, go for it. Don't be scared to set goals that are what you feel like maybe too high or unreachable. Because I've set a lot of goals and I didn't reach any of them, but I did some great things. So you got to keep aspiring to reach high. Surround yourself around good people. Feel like as you get older, you start realizing there's people in your circle that don't need to be there, and there's people who aren't in your circle that need to be there. Um, I feel like um, just continue to be a good person. Treat people right because you don't know how it'll come back to you, or when you'll need somebody, and be willing to do anything. You're never too big. You're never too good. Um, and I just feel like whatever you set your mind to, if you do it for the right intentions, something positive is going to happen from it. And I appreciate you thinking of me to be able to be on the show and kind of shed some light on my journey and wisdom in the industry.
In
I'm
your
still
field,
working. I'm
you're a
in my
master
field.
of your
Yeah.
craft, and people can learn
Yeah.
from you, no matter the age, no matter the experience. Hey, where
Yeah.
can everybody find you and follow you and subscribe?
Just my name, Justin Stuckey. I try to change all my stuff to that, so easily searchable. Also, don't sit on ideas. That's the worst thing you can do. Go for it, whether it succeeds or fails, but just try the idea. But you can find me on all social media platforms, just Justin Stuckey. Be pretty easy. I think my Twitter, you just got to type in Stuckey, and I think you'll find me. But yeah, man. Appreciate the time and y'all follow me, like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube.
He's
Stuck in
on a
my thoughts. We'll be
meteoric
back in.
rise. You better hop on or you're getting left off. Justin Stuckey,
Yes, sir.
thank you so much for your time. We will hopefully talk again soon. Thanks everybody for checking it out. Subscribe to Justin's channel. Would appreciate it if you subscribe to mine as well. We'll see you on the next interview. Thanks for checking in to the Galloway Communications interview podcast series.